Yes, hello guys. Once again, this is Doc A. And for today, we're going to have a discussion about anger, hostility, aggression, abuse, and violence. Okay, so when we talk about anger, we could say that anger is a normal human emotion. It is a strong, uncomfortable, emotional response to a real or perceived provocation. So, meaning to say that we experience anger in response to a real or perceived provocations. Okay, so anger results when a person is being frustrated, if they are hurt, or they are afraid. So, handled appropriately and expressed assertively, anger can be a positive force. I mean, anger could help a person resolve conflict. It could help person solve problems and make decisions wisely if they could be able to handle the emotion appropriately. Okay, so anger energizes the body physically for self-defense when needed by activating our fight or flight response mechanism of the sympathetic nervous system. So when we express inappropriately or when we suppress anger, so anger can cause a physical or emotional problem, or it could also interfere our relationships. Okay, so although it is stated that anger is normal, it is often perceived as a negative feeling. So many people are not comfortable expressing anger directly. Nevertheless, anger can be a normal and healthy reaction when situations or circumstances are being unfair, or they feel that there is unjust, or personal rights are not being respected, or realistic expectations are not being met. So if the person can express his or her anger assertively, problem solving or conflict resolution is possible. So anger or angry feelings are not bad nor wrong. It isn't healthy to deny or to eliminate ever feeling angry. I mean, it is essential or it is good for our health for us to be able to recognize, to express, and to manage angry feelings in a positive manner. So anger becomes negative when the person tries to deny it, when they try to suppress it, or expresses it inappropriately. Okay, on the other hand, we have aggression. So here we could see that aggression is any action with the intent to harm. Okay, so some people try to express their angry feelings by engaging in aggression. But there are certain activities, safe activities, that we could also do that, like hitting a punching bag or yelling. So always remember, if you're doing it positively, so those activities are called as catharsis. So catharsis are supposed to provide a release of anger. So however, catharsis could also increase rather than elevate angry feelings. Therefore, we could say that cathartic activities may be contraindicated for angry clients. So, activities that are not aggressive, like talking or walking with another person, or more likely, seem to be effective in decreasing the anger feelings that they have. So there are also high hostility and anger, which are associated with increased risk of coronary artery diseases and hypertension. So hostility can lead to angry outbursts that are not effective for angry expression. So effective methods of anger expression are the use of assertive communication so that we could be able to express anger, and mindfulness techniques should replace any aggressive outburst of temper. Okay? So when we are dealing with aggression, it could be physical aggression. So physical aggression is behavior in which a person attacks or injures another person, or if they destroys one's property. So it could be verbal, it could be physical aggression. Okay? Verbal and physical aggression are meant to harm or to punish another person or to force someone into compliance. So some clients with psychiatric disorders display hostile or physically aggressive behavior that represents a challenge to nurses and other staff. So here we could see two types of aggression. It could be a hostile aggression. So usually we're doing that because we are angry. We have this hostility and aggression or the intent of harming them personally. We really wanted to hurt them. So if that is the case, if we wanted to hurt them because we are angry at them, we call it as hostile aggression. However, sometimes we also have this instrumental aggression. For instrumental aggression, so there are motives why persons are being aggressive, why they are being hostile. Okay, for example, you wanted to get one's attention. So you could be that could be your motivation. Another example is if there is a cause on why you're doing that. For example, on this slide, we could see that a player, a football player, is attacking the one who has the ball. Okay, for them and for their team to win. So we call that as instrumental aggression because you really don't want to hurt that person. You just have your goal and you wanted to win. So that's instrumental aggression. But if you really intended to hurt the person because you wanted them hurt, so we call it as hostile aggression. Okay? So are we good? Are we clear? Okay, I'm hoping so. If not, you could always ask questions on our comment box. Okay, so moving forward, so we have hostility. Usually hostility are also called as verbal aggression. So hostility is an emotion that is expressed through verbal abuse. Okay, lack of cooperation, violations of rules or norms, or any threatening behavior. So that's according to Schultz and Wiedebeck in 2013. So a person may express hostility when he or she feels threatened or they feel that they are powerless. So hostile behavior is intended to intimidate or to cause emotional harm to another, and it can be led to physical aggression. Okay? So hurting others is aggression, but if you're doing that verbally, so we call it as verbal aggression or hostility. Okay? So moving forward, we have the phases of aggressive incident. Okay? So for aggression, we could be able to see five phases. So the first one is the triggering phase. So triggering phase is what sets them off. Okay? So incident or situation that initiate an aggressive response. So an event or circumstances in the environment that initiates the client's response, which is often anger or hostility, is triggering phase. Okay, again, what sets them off? What are the situations that initiates the aggressive response? That's the triggering phase. So what are the usual signs and symptoms here? We could see, or maybe people could feel that they are being restless, there is anxiety, they are irritable, they could experience muscle tension, rapid breathing, there could also be perspiration, your voice are louder, and you're angry, okay? In terms of vital signs, there's increase in your blood pressure, you're all red, so most likely you have high temperature. So those are some of the physical cues that we could look and see during the triggering phase, okay? So from the triggering phase, we're moving towards on the second phase, and that is the escalation phase. So for escalation phase, it represents behavior that indicates a loss of control. So here, clients' responses represents the escalating behavior that would indicate movement toward a loss of control. So some of the common cues or common signs and symptoms that we could be able to see for patients or for people who are already on the escalation phase. They could be shouting, they could be cursing, there are threatening gestures, okay, like they could clench their fists, there could be hostility, so verbal aggressions is already present. They could experience loss of ability to solve a problem or to think clearly. We could also notice that they are yelling, they are swearing, um, their face are red, okay, flash face. So there could be agitations and the likes, okay. So the third phase of the aggression is known as the crisis phase. So here the patient or the client already explode. So they already lose their control. So during the crisis phase, the emotions and the physical body is already in crisis. So what do I mean by that? The client loses their control. So they lost their emotion and physical control. They are starting to throw objects. They are starting to kick person, spitting, biting, scratching, punching, scratching, screaming. So basically, they cannot communicate clearly now, and they are starting to hurt and be physically and verbally aggressive to the other person. Okay. So next on our list is the recovery phase. Okay. So for the recovery phase, it means that we are starting to regain our physical and emotional control. If you're going to look at the side of our slide, if you could see the emotions that they have from the baseline level of person's feeling, it starts to rise during the triggering phase and rise even more during the escalation, and it reaches its peak during the crisis. However, once the person already exploded, it started to subside and go down. So we call that as the recovery phase. So sometimes it is also called as plateau because after it subsides, it remains on the same level of emotions. Okay? So usually for this, we could say that the patient starts to calm down, okay, and they could be able to regain their physical and their emotional control. So some things that we could be able to observe on people who are already on their recovery phase is that they are starting to lower their voice, the muscle tension starts to decrease. What else? They could speak and think clearer, and they are more rational in terms of their communication. So their body also starts to relax, same with their emotions. Okay? And last on our list, we have the post-crisis phase. Okay? So it means that you're back to normal level of functioning. Okay? So a client here attempts to reconcile with the other person, and they start to return to the level of functioning before the aggressive incident and its antecedents. Okay, so we could note that people here during the post-crisis phase starts to apologize. They start to feel the sense of remorse. Okay, some are crying, some are quiet, some are withdrawn. Okay, but all of those things, what is important is we could see and we could feel the remorse within themselves. Okay, so those are the different phases of aggression. So moving forward, so now we're going to discuss about abuse and violence. Okay, so for abuse and violence, we could say that victims of abuse or violence can certainly have physical injuries that needed medical attention, but they also experience not only physical injuries, but some of them could also experience psychological injuries, which has a broader range of responses. So I think physical injuries could heal faster as compared to psychological injuries. Okay. Before we move forward, I just want to let you know and to tell you the hand signal that we could use, or we could also tell other people so that they would be aware of this. So this is how we do it. So the palm, okay, try to tuck your thumb, then wrap it with your other fingers. Okay? So if they do that, it means that they need help. Okay? So this is a signal stating that they need help. So they are experiencing abuses and violence. Okay? With the people that supposed to be there for them. Okay? Supposed to be the one who's going to help them. Okay? So when we talk about abuse and violence, the violence at home is we could say that there are quite a lot of violence that are happening in one's home. Okay. However, these are not usually reported to the authorities. So one of the things that we could let them know is to use the signal for help. Okay, so again, just tuck the thumb, then trap it and wrap the other fingers on the thumb. So do that. In doing that, so they're making some signal that they need help. Okay. So one of the example of abuse and violence that usually happens inside the house is the intimate partner violence. So sometimes it is called as battered spouse syndrome. Okay, in the Philippines, this one is much more known as the battered wife syndrome. Okay, I'm not saying that it's only wife who could be able to experience battery, but also the husbands could also experience that. That is why in some books they are called as battered spouse syndrome. Okay, but in some books they're telling it as an intimate partner violence. So because it does not only pertains for husband and wives, even for boyfriend girlfriend thing, it could also be happening for those who are in cohabitation um, setup or live in, as what we call it here in the Philippines. So they could also experience this one. So if we're going to look at our slides, okay, it says that about 1 in 5 women and 1 in every 7 men report having experienced severe physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. And I think that is quite alarming, right? Okay, at my own perspective, if you are being abused, being battered and hurt by your partner, it's time for you to get out of that partnership. So that's just my own thought. Okay. So other things, other statistics. By the way, these statistics are based from the US and not from the Philippines because there are very limited statistics when we talk about these things here in the Philippines. So about 1 in 5 women and 1 in 12 men have experienced contact sexual violence by an intimate partner. Okay, so however, 10% of women and 2% of men report having been stalked by an intimate partner. So those are some statistics that states that this is really happening. Okay, so um family violence. Okay, when we talk about family violence, it encompasses the spouse battering, it encompasses neglect, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse of children, elder abuse, rape, including marital rape. All of those are part of family violence. Okay, and one of those violence is our intimate partner violence. So again, sometimes it is called as battered spouse syndrome, sometimes it is noted as battered wife syndrome. So when we talk about intimate partner violence, this is the mistreatment or misuse of one person by another in the context of an emotionally intimate relationship. So the relationship may be spouse between partners or between GF, BF, okay, boyfriend, girlfriend relationship, or even strange relationship. Okay, so when we talk about intimate partner violence, it is a cycle of domestic violence. So cyclical, it just sometimes other people are just thinking that it is really part of a relationship, but it's not, okay? So cycle of domestic violence that is characterized by the one of the partners is beat, humiliated, and other forms of aggression by the partner. So in the Philippines, we have the RA 9262 or the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act. So the abuse can be emotional or psychological. It could be physical, it could be sexual, or a combination. Okay. Well, actually, according to statistics, the combination is the most common. So psychological abuse or emotional abuse includes name calling, belittling, screaming, yelling, destroying of the property, or making threats, as well as other forms like refusing to speak to the partner or ignoring the partner. So all of those could be an example of psychological or emotional abuse. So when we talk about physical abuse, it ranges from shoving and pushing to severe battering, choking, okay, strangling, and it may involve broken limbs, broken ribs, internal bleeding, brain damage, and even homicide. So when we deal about sexual abuse, so it includes assaults during sexual relations like raping, hitting the person, slapping the person while doing the deed, pulling the hair, biting, okay. So, and of course, the marital rape. So when we talk about marital rape, yeah, I know you are spouses. So that's part of being that. However, if the person doesn't want to do it, so do not force them because when you force them, it could be considered as marital rape. Okay? So a while ago, I've stated that it is a cycle of domestic violence, right? So here we could see the cycle of violence in the intimate partner violence. okay, or the battered spouse syndrome. So the cycle of violence or abuse is another reason often why people have difficulty of living the abusive relationship. They are telling why one still wants to stay on the relationship if they are being hurt. It is because of the cycle. Okay, because on the cycle of violence, on this cycle of abuse, it's not all about hurting. Okay, there is a phase, there is a part wherein they could feel that they are being loved, that the person, the abuser, did it just because they are on the height of their emotions. Okay, but that is um, not a very good scape, okay, or scapegoat or reasoning to do. Okay, so here are the cycle of violence. So it always starts with the tension or the tension building. So this is the initial episode of the minor battering. Okay, so like the threats, the intimidation, the buildup of fear and guilt are on the tension building. So after the tension building, the emotions will be heightened and it could be followed by the violent behavior or the battering incident per se. So battering incident is more serious form of battering. So this is the actual abuse where they do the emotional, the physical, and the sexual act, the sexual abuse. Okay? So after hurting their partner, so they will lead to the next level, which is the honeymoon phase, okay, or the honeymoon period. So the period of remorse. So sometimes it is also called as period of contrition, and some books are also calling this as the aftermath. Okay, so this is the period of the abuser expressing that they are regretful. Okay, they are apologetic and they are promising that these things will never happen again. So usually the abuser professes his love to the partner and may even engage in romantic behavior after. Okay, so meaning to say after hurting, beating the person, they will buy gifts, they will give flowers, and they will be extra clingy, okay, just to let the other person feels that they really love them and that they are promising that it won't happen again. Okay, so the abuser becomes more loving and it gives their partner hope that yeah, maybe my partner will change and this will not happen again. However, this is a cycle, right? So when we talk about cycle, it is continuous. Okay, so after a while, tension building will be there again. So because of the height of emotion, there will be violence. And because of that, so they would lead again to the honeymoon phase. Okay, so moving forward, what are the characteristics of an abuser? So, according to studies, it's CLIS, C-L-I-S. Okay? So, an abuser usually comes from a violent family. They were able to see that on their own family before. Okay? It happens there, and they thought that it's part of it. Okay? Second, abusers usually have low self esteem and they could just have higher confidence on themselves if they were able to hurt their partners. Okay, next, they are immature and non-assertive, obviously, because if you are mature, you're not going to do that, right? And they have a strong feeling of inadequacy. Okay, so they feel that they are incomplete, and what makes them powerful and complete is in doing so. Okay. So on the other hand, so here are the characteristics of a violent family. Okay. So Family violence, for us to categorize violent families, if there are violent or family violence like spouse battering, neglect, physical, emotional, or sexual abuse of children, elder abuse, marital rape. So here are the common characteristics. There is social isolation. So for social isolation, members of this families keep to themselves and usually do not invite others into their home or tell anyone what is happening. Okay? Second characteristic, there is abuse of power and control. So the abusive family member almost always holds a position of power and control over the victim. So the abuser exerts not only physical power, but also it could be economic, it could be social control. Third, if there are alcohol and other forms of substance abuse, yeah, because they are telling that they feel higher, okay, in ranks, in status, okay, if they are under the alcohol or substance abuse influences. And lastly, so last characteristic of a violent family is the intergenerational transmission process. Okay, sorry for that. Intergenerational transmission process. So what do it mean? It shows that the pattern of violence are perpetuated from one generation to the next generation. Just like what I have stated a while ago. If a person saw that in their own family before when they are still young, what they are going to think is that it is part of being in a family. And what they're going to do when they have their own family of their own, they're also going to do that. Okay? That's why the violence I keep on repeating from one generation to the next generation. Okay? Why? Because of the role modeling, because of social learning, because of the experience that they had. So it suggests that family violence is learned pattern of behavior. Okay? So in terms of the trait of the abuse, so it is stated that the most common trait of an abuse is being dependent. Okay? They are too dependent on their partner. Okay? They feel that they cannot live without their partners. They feel that they're going to die if they are not with their partners. They feel that they are hopeless without their partner. Okay? So they are too dependent on their partners. That's why they stay in the relationship. They stay at their home. Okay? So what can we do? Okay, what can we do? First, if we have patients who are experiencing these abuses, okay, um of course there's a lot of things that we could do. Okay, first we need to ensure their safety. Okay, we need to ensure their safety. If they are really into it, if they really wanted to not be part of the violence, so we need to ensure their safety. So they they could file for restraining orders so that their partner won't be there, okay, or they cannot go near them, okay. They could do that, or they could also ask the police to arrest the abuser, okay. We also need to ask them questions. Okay? So what questions can we ask them? So questions about their stresses. Okay, questions about their safety. Okay, are there houses or places that they could do and go, or that they feel that they are safe? Okay. We could also ask them about how they feel about the abuse. Okay? Do they feel that they are being abused? Are they afraid of their abuser? Okay? So next, we could also ask them about their family and their friends. Do they know it? Okay. Do they feel safe if they're going to be indoors with their family, with their friends? Okay. And lastly, let's ask them about their emergency plan. So what are your plans after? Okay. So what are their plans after? Um, are they really ensure that they want to get out of the relationship? Okay. So do they want us to call the DSWD? Okay, or some agencies or non-governmental organizations that caters for victims of abuses. So we could also do those things. Okay, so aside from ensuring their safety, we could also provide emotional support. Okay, we could also provide emotional support for them. Okay, we could also encourage them to verbalize their feelings. Okay, let them just tell us how they're feeling. Okay, um, when they go to the hospital and have a consultation, do not forget to do the medical legal assessment. Okay. By the way, for that, you could see a form wherein there is a drawing of a person in front and on back, because you're just going to draw there and put marks on the significant injuries that these patients were able to acquire during the battery. Okay. However, usually it is suggested that they go to government hospitals if they're going to file cases, because they are the one, the doctors there are the one who are certified to provide medical legal assessments. Okay. So again, if they don't have houses to go to after, we could look for some shelters like under the DSWD and the NGOs. Another thing, we could also put them into seminar and training. So trainings that will help them to be assertive. Okay. However, if they wanted, if he or she still wanted to be within the relationship, maybe we could ask them to have marriage counseling. Okay. Or we could also put the abuser into the anger and stress management rehabilitation, so that they would be able to know how to handle how they are experiencing. Okay. So, as healthcare workers, always remember that we need to believe the victim. Okay? We need to believe that they are victims. We also need to ensure and maintain clients' confidentiality. So, there's no need for us to tell. For example, you know someone and that is your patient. Do not tell it to the person that you also know them, what's happening to them. Okay? Next, if we have these patients, always listen to them, okay? And say that we are sorry for what happened to them. So we could also express that we are really concerned about their safety. We could tell our patients or the victim that they have the right to be safe and to be respected, okay? And always tell our clients that it is not their fault to be in that situation. Okay? Tell them that there could be some support groups and individual counseling that are available if they need one. Okay? And maybe we could also identify community resources and encourage the client to develop a safety plan. Okay? We could also assist them and give contact numbers of shelter, police department, and other resources that they could use. Okay, and whatever their decision is after, remember this is a cycle. Okay, so there could be a point in time that the victim will tell that they still love and wanted to be with that person. So what we could do is just to accept and respect the victim's decision. However, we need to encourage them to be able to develop a safety plan. Okay? So I'm hoping that we are good and this is clear about the intimate partner violence. So moving forward to the next type of violence is the child abuse. So sometimes it is also called as child maltreatment. So this is an intentional injury of a child, okay? So it can include physical abuse or physical injuries. We also have neglect or failure to prevent harm, failure to provide adequate physical or emotional care or supervision. Abandonment could also be an example of child abuse, sexual assault or intrusion, and some overt torture or maiming could be under child abuse. So child abuse happens. Always remember this. Child abuse happens when an older adult takes advantage of his authority over a younger child. Okay? So, meaning to say that in a child abuse, there is violence. Okay? Violence from an older adult to a younger child. Okay, so here in the Philippines, we have the Republic Act 7610, or the Special Protection of Children Against Abuse, Exploitation, and Discrimination Act. Okay, so according to the law, children refers to a person below 18 years of age or those over but unable to fully take care of themselves or protect themselves from abuse, neglect, cruelty, exploitation, or discrimination because of physical or mental disability or condition. So again, it is clear. So under the RA 7610, it protects below 18 years old, and for those people who are above 18 years old but they cannot protect themselves because of physical or mental disabilities. Okay? So all of them are covered by RA 7610. So here they defined child abuse as maltreatment, whether habitual or not, of child, which includes any of the following. One, psychological and physical abuse, neglect, cruelty, sexual abuse, and emotional maltreatment. Two, any act by deeds or words which debases or degrades or demeans the intrinsic worth and dignity of a child as a human being. Three, unreasonable deprivation of his basic needs for survival, such as food and shelter, or failure to immediately give medical treatment to an injured child, resulting in serious impairment of his growth and development, or permanent incapacity or death. Okay? So all of those things falls under child abuse. However, there are also some circumstances that could lead to child abuse. So these are gravely threaten or endanger the survival and normal development of children. Okay? So if the children is still living in an armed conflict or being affected by armed conflict related activities. So children, for instance, who are living in areas wherein there are war. So that's against Republic Act 7610. They should not be there. They should be on safe places. So children working under conditions hazardous to life, Okay. Well, on the first place, children should not be working. Okay. So that's already a form of child abuse. But if ever they are working, okay, so that is also a form of child abuse. So living in or fending for themselves in the street. Okay, so if the parents are allowing the children to be beggars, okay, or to roam around in dangerous areas, in dangerous streets, so that's also a violation of RA 7610. So being a member of indigenous cultural community or living under condition of extreme poverty. So children who are living on extreme poverty, so that's also an example of child abuse. So victim of man-made or natural disaster and circumstances analogous to those above stated, which endanger the life, safety, and normal development of children. So what else? So comprehensive program against child abuse, exploitation, and discrimination refers to the coordinated program of services and facilities to protect the children against child prostitution and sexual abuse, child trafficking, okay, so obscene publication and indecent shows. That's why if you will notice, if the parents, especially during the pandemic, there are quite a lot of news wherein children are being sold online to put on shows. So that's an example of child abuse. And other acts of abuses and circumstances which threaten or endanger the survival and development of children. Okay? So aside from physical abuse, we also have some psychological abuse. So children could also experience psychological abuse. So usually when we talk about psychological abuse, these are emotional abuses. So it is an abuse in the form of insults or undermining one's confidence. So this includes verbal assaults like blaming, screaming, name calling, using some sarcastic words. So constant family discord characterized by fighting, yelling, chaos. So meaning to say, if the family are always fighting, it could also affect the children, and it also falls under the psychological or the emotional abuse. So other things, we they could also experience emotional deprivation or withholding, if they are not experiencing or feeling the affection, the nurturing and normal experiences that would engender the acceptance, love, security, and self-worth. So that could also be an example of emotional abuse. So emotional abuse is often accompanies other types of abuse. It could be combined together with physical and sexual abuse. So exposure to parental alcoholism, drug use, or prostitution and neglect may also falls within the category of emotional abuses. Okay? So, next on the list, we have sexual abuse. So, for sexual abuse, these are abuse in the form of unwanted sexual contact. So, when we talk about child abuse and sexual abuse, it may pertain to with or without penetration. So, it involves sexual act that is performed by an adult on a child younger than 18 years old. So examples of this could include incest, rape, sodomy that are performed directly by the person or with an object, oral genital contact, and acts of molestations like rubbing, fondling, and exposing the adult genitals. So, sexual abuse involves exploitation, such as making or promoting or selling pornographic materials involving minors and coercion of minors to participate in any obscene acts. So how are we going to know whether the child is experiencing sexual abuse? So usually there are unexplained pain, swelling, redness, and bleeding on the lips, mouth, and the genital area. Okay, they could also demonstrate sexual information above his or her own peers. through indirect speeches, words, phrases, and behavior. And sometimes they could also play sexual games on their own with other children or with toys. Okay. So aside from that, so the fourth type of our child abuse is neglect. So when we talk about neglect, this is the lack of provision of those things which are necessary for children to grow and to develop. So it is a malicious or ignorant withholding of physical, emotional, or educational necessities for the children's well being. So, child abuse by neglect is the most prevalent type of maltreatment, and it includes refusal to seek health care or delaying doing so. So, it also involves abandonment, it involves inadequate supervision, reckless disregard of the child's safety, um, spousal abuse in the child's presence could also be part of it, and even failing to enroll the child in the school is also part of neglect. Okay, so moving forward, so here are some of the warning signs. Okay, so most likely these are the things that we could be able to see on patients or victims of child abuse. So first, they could experience serious injuries, okay, like fracture, burns, or laceration with no reported history of trauma. So usually the injuries are in various stages of healing. So there are some injuries that are already healed. There are still on the process of healing, but there are some injuries that are fresh. Okay. So aside from that, unusual injuries could also be seen for the child's age and the level of development. Like, for example, fractured femur for 2 years, for 2 month old. Okay, that's very um, it's not usual, it's unusual. Okay, unless it's already toddler maybe. Okay, but for babies, for infant, so fracture on the femur or any type of fracture is um a red flag. Okay, so aside from that, they could also have a high incidence of urinary tract infections. There could be bruises, okay, red and swollen genitals could also be seen, especially for patients with who experience sexual abuse. Okay, they could experience tear or bruising on the rectum or the vaginal area. So, other than that, inconsistencies or changes in the child's history during evaluation. So, child and parent giving an inconsistent history. Okay, so it could be a red flag. So delay in seeking treatment for the significant injuries. For example, they already have fracture, but they're not seeking for medical help. So that's a red flag, right? So evidence of old injuries not reported, such as scars, fractures that are not treated, and multiple bruises that parent and caregiver cannot explain adequately. Okay, so if you will notice, other than that, um, psychologically speaking, or through their the usual things that they are doing, aside from head injuries, okay, bruises, child may also protect the abuser because they fear that if they tell something to other people about that, they will be punished after. Okay, so there could be some human bites. Okay, rope burns from the areas that are being tied. Okay, so burns on different areas. So there could also be internal injuries. Okay. Usually patients who have experiencing child abuse have no to little eye contact with adults, and they have a withdrawn um, interest on talking and having physical contact with any adults. So in the Philippines, we also have warning signs of a neglected children. So we just need to remember SHADE, SHADE, SHADE. So S is for serious injury. So we have already discussed that. H, high incidence of urinary tract infection. So especially for patients who are experiencing sexual abuse, inconsistencies of changes in the child's history, okay, delay in seeking treatment for significant injury, and the evidence of old injuries that are not being reported. Okay, so for Filipino abused children, we could also notice that there are shades, okay? So almost same thing with the other parts like serious injuries in various healing stages. So usually they have healthy hair, but you will notice that the length of the hair is different because sometimes when their abuser are mad at them, they're cutting some parts of their hair, okay? So most of the time they are apathetic, so they have no reaction on things. Okay. We will notice that they are withdrawn and depressed. And for those who are sexually abused, we will notice that they have excessive knowledge about sex, meaning to say they know much more about sex as compared to um, those children of the same age. And because of the things that they are experiencing, or maybe especially if they are experiencing emotional abuse, we would also notice that they have low self-esteem. Okay, it is because of the demeaning words that they usually hear, and sometimes they just accept it. Okay, so what are the characteristics of an abusive parent? So first, just like what I've told you a while ago, during the discussion with violence, so usually they come from a violent family. This is the type of family that they were reared. Okay, so when it comes to their own family, when they are rearing their own children, they started to be violent as well. So another characteristic is that they were also abused by their parents before. Okay, and because of that, they think that it's the right way to do. So we could say that there is inadequate parenting skills. Okay. So next on the list is that they are socially isolated. Usually, these parents isolate themselves. They are not chit-chatting a lot with other parents. Okay, because they don't trust anyone. Okay. And since they're doing this, so we could say that they are emotionally immature and they have negative attitude towards the management of the victims. So for treatment, here are the things that we could do. So first, we need to ensure the child's safety and well-being. So I think this is the first part of the treatment. This may involve removing the child from the home, which can also be traumatic to them. So given the high risk of psychological problems, a thorough psychiatric evaluation should be done to our patients or to these victims. Second, we need to provide physiologic needs. If they are hungry, so feed them. If they're dirty, maybe we could ask them to change clothes. If they have wounds, we need to treat those wounds. Okay, so basically, whatever needs that they have, we need to attend on that. Okay, so same thing with the wound care for those with physical abuse. Next, we could also need to provide emotional support to the victim. Okay, we need to encourage them to tell what happened to them and to tell us how they feel. Okay, next, we need to report to authorities. Okay, according to the law, the RA 7610, reporting should be done on the first 48 hours. Okay, if we witness any type of abuse, child abuse, we need to report it. within 24 hours. Okay, we can report it to the barangay hall, to the SWD, and even to the police station. Okay. For very young children, because if you will remember, I've stated that we need to encourage them to verbalize what's happening to them, how they feel. But for those who are very young and may not have or may have a hard time communicating, so the best thing that we can do is through play therapy. Okay, where he or she could draw or act the situations using puppets or dolls rather than just talking what happened, okay, or just telling what is on their mind and how they feel. So we could always use play therapy and even music and art therapies. So family therapy could also be a great help. It may indicate reuniting the whole family if it is feasible. So that parents would also know and learn something. Okay, parents may require psychiatric or even substance abuse treatment if they need one. Okay, so if you're going to ask me the best thing to do if we have this type of patients or if we know someone who's experiencing child abuse is to make sure of their safety and to provide the physiologic needs first. Okay, because when it comes to emotional abuse, maybe physical abuses, physical trauma would heal faster as compared to the emotions or the emotional abuses that they might experience. Okay, so basically this is the last on our slides, and if you have questions, do not forget to ask me. You could use our chat box, okay, or you could just approach me if there are things that are unclear to you. So if you don't have any other queries, so I wish you all well, God bless, and see you next time. Once again, this is Doc A, and wishing you all the best. So good luck on your exams. Thank you.